There's a fresh edition of MLB Power Rankings at CBS Sports, and there's no change in the top two with the Yankees and Phillies. We're going to get heavy into the conversation about the Dodgers in just a second at 4. Biggest risers this week, Blue Jays up 7 spots to 12. Biggest fallers, Cardinals down 5 spots to 20. Well, let's welcome in the man who puts those power rankings together, Matt Snyder. And we have our Major League Baseball insider, Jim Bowden, joining us for their weekly slot. So we had a potential World Series preview in New York this weekend with the Dodgers and the Yankees here. But, Matt, I want to start with you because you put a lot of words into your write-up here about the Dodgers. Why specifically focus on L.A. this time of year with what you put out there?
Well, they're just a very interesting team. I mean, look, they're the World Series favorites by the gambling odds, but they have been an elite team, but also pretty inconsistent for an elite team. I don't think that they belong outside the elite tier, but they've had some stretches where they've lost a decent number of games. And if you look, they had a very impressive series in Yankee Stadium where they took 2 of 3 and they pushed the Yankees last night and really came close to sweeping them. But in their last 17 games, they're 8-9. They just lost the series to the Pirates right before they went to New York. So they're back and forth, back and forth. Still really good, gigantic upside in spurts. I mean, with Mookie, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Teoscar Hernandez, who had a huge series in the Bronx. They have so much upside on offense. And by the end of the year, pitching-wise, they'll have Clayton Kershaw back. Maybe Walker Buehler will start to look like his old self. You throw them alongside Yamamoto and Tyler Glasnow, and that's an amazing playoff rotation. They could well win the World Series. But I just don't think that to this point in the regular season, they've played like a top 3 team. They're more like a top 5 team.
Yeah, and I would agree with Matt. And the inconsistency, when you look at the team and you wonder why, it's because they're top heavy. They're built by stars. You look at their offensive lineup, they're getting it done at the top of the lineup. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, and Teoscar Hernandez, all 5 are going to be all-stars. They've had a great year. But the bottom half of that lineup has not produced. That's been a problem. Certainly they're missing Max Muncy on the injured list. But the bottom part of that lineup has to be fixed. And Andrew Friedman, the president of the team, has told me he's out there trying to get an outfielder here between now and the trade deadline to try to help solve that problem. Now, the other thing is their rotation has been great at the very top of the rotation. Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Tyler Glasnow have lived up to expectations. The young Gavin Stone has been solid, but the back of the rotation has been very inconsistent, as the bullpen has. So Matt Snyder has them where they belong right now in the number 4 spot. They have some work to do at the trade deadline. Like Matt said, a team that is top heavy is well positioned for October in a short series, but over 162 games, those weaknesses will expose themselves, and that's what we've seen so far.
So let's follow up on that and go a little macro here. Jim brought up top heavy with the Dodgers. I just feel like the National League in general might be top heavy, guys. And I know we're still in early June, but I'm old school. I look at box scores and standings. Matt, only 4-16 teams in the National League have a winning record. Dodgers, Brewers, and then the Braves and the Phillies, and that is it. I'm curious if it even crossed your mind putting the power rankings together of what the National League represents right now.
Well, it's definitely crossed my mind because when I'm at like 13 or 14 and I'm looking at Giants and Padres, like, man, it just feels like somebody should be better than these teams, but I don't have any other good options there. Look, there are 4 teams tied for the last wild card spot right now, and they're all 2 games under 500. The Padres are in the 2nd wild card spot, and they're 1 game under 500. We have never seen a playoff team with a losing record, but it feels like we're bound to get one this year, at least 1 in the National League, maybe even 2. At this rate, and I think this is the thing that summarizes it best for me is the Nationals are only a game and a half out of the wild card. Do the Nationals feel like they should be in playoff contention in June, in the 2nd week of June? The Mets, as much of a mess as the Mets have been, they're only 3 games out of a playoff spot. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Cubs feel like they can't win a game to save their lives unless they're playing the White Sox, and they're sitting right there in playoff position. It's unbelievable how bad everything in the National League is after those top 4 teams. As I said, it gets a little frustrating when I'm ranking the teams and I get to like 10, 11, 12, and I'm like, man, there's no good teams left.
And you can see from the stand, Tommy, that Milwaukee's only 2 games behind the Dodgers right now, and the Atlanta Braves only 2 back in the loss column with the Dodgers. So those 4 teams, all of them in very strong position. for the postseason. I think that's something to keep in mind, including home field advantage at some point. But I don't think we're going to have teams make the playoffs playing 500 or below. I think you'll see some teams kind of emerge. You've got the Cincinnati Reds that have a very good offense that haven't hit because of all the injuries and suspensions that they've been dealing with. I think they'll be better in the second half. If the Cubs can make some moves at the deadline, I can see them improving. I think the Padres are going to end up with a winning record as well. So I think it will all even out at the end. But for right now, yeah, it's pretty clear. We have 4 teams that are heading to the playoffs, and they're pretty stacked.
Jim, I'm glad you brought up the Cincinnati Reds. Let's take a little bit of time to talk about your preseason division winners. Things weren't looking good, but all of a sudden they're on a bit of a heater here. What's going on in Cincy?
Well, of course, when I predicted them to win, I didn't understand that Noelvi Marte would get an 80-game suspension, that Matt McLain would have a shoulder injury that would finish his season, that TJ Friedl would go on the injured list twice. I mean, look, everything that could have gone wrong. Encarnacion Strand, the first baseman, didn't hit to start the year. Then he went on the IL. That has been really tough. But the good news for Reds fans, the pitching's been really good, right? Hunter Green has lived up to expectations. And if you watched Andrew Abbott and Nick Lodolo, their starts this week, I mean, both of them only gave up 1 run in their starts. They've been really good. So the pitching's in good shape if they can figure out the hitting. Now, this week they had a really good week. They went flying up Matt Snyder's board, and it's because Ellie De La Cruz, Jeimer Candelaria, and TJ Friedl each hit multiple homers this week. They each stole multiple bases this week. And the one thing's for sure, if they can start to hit, if the bullpen depth can improve a little bit, Cincinnati's going to be in this race, and they got a chance to get to the postseason. But again, they've got work to do between now and the deadline, getting Marte off the suspended list, getting Encarnacion Strand off the injured list, get Spencer Steer hitting, and maybe make a trade or 2 for a couple more bats. But they're not going to go away. They're going to be in this race all year.
Yeah, and remember, it was June last year. Entering June, they had a losing record, and then they got really, really hot in June. So in that clubhouse, they could have that kind of feeling. They could talk, hey, this is when we get hot. This is when we get hot. This is what we do. In June, we get hot. It's easy to say that and convince yourself that this is why they're starting to play well. Hey, we're just slow starters. Now we're getting it going. So there's an air of confidence with this team right now. They've won 12 of their last 16. TJ Friedl has really provided such a big boost since he got back from both of his injuries. You know, remember, he was hurt to start the year, then he came back for a few games and he got hurt again. Now he's back. He's hitting the ball out of the ballpark. Nick Lodolo has been so good. As Jim said, he's been great in the rotation. And the funny thing is, it's kind of easy, as we just talked about, with how many teams that I have ranked in the teens that just don't feel very good. It is easy to jump up because only 3 games in the standings separate number 12 from number 24. But the Reds do deserve it, having won 12 of their last 16, and they look really good right now.
Again, the NL is wide open, as we've talked about. Gentlemen, we've got a little over 2 minutes here, but Matt, I'll start with you, talking about how tough it is ranking teams in the teens. But let's talk about a couple that are getting a lot of respect from you: Cleveland and KC, 5 and 6.
Yeah, the Guardians are 20 games over 500. They're on pace to win over 100 games. They've rarely done that in club history. They've got Steven Kwan hitting 370. Jose Ramirez with 62 RBIs. Are you kidding me? Good power year from Josh Naylor. Ridiculous bullpen. The Guardians look so good right now. They're an easy number 5. And hey, the Royals, they just won a series over the Mariners. Salvador Perez is ageless. Bobby Witt Jr., ridiculous season in all categories. Seth Lugo's having an amazing year. Brady Singer and Cole Reagan's great rotation there in KC. I love the Royals. I'll give it to Jim there since we're running out of time.
The Guardians have gone from 30th in homers last year to 8th with basically the same roster. That's amazing. Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor have combined for 34 homers and 109 RBIs already. But the Royals, I talked to Matt Cortero, the manager of the Royals, yesterday. I said, how in the world are you 5th in baseball in runs scored when really you only have 2 guys hitting? Bobby Witt's hitting 320 with 11 homers and 47 RBIs. Salvador Perez hitting close to 300 with 10 homers. I said, but how in the world, when no one else is hitting, are you 5th in runs scored? He said, look at the strikeout column. Only Toronto and Houston have struck out less than we have. We don't strike out. We put the ball in play. We move the chains. We get a guy in scoring position. We hit a bloop. We score him. been a great story. And by the way, GM JJ Pichella has been out there trying to get more bullpen help and trade for a corner outfielder. Cleveland and Kansas City are for real. Can you believe it? Wow, what a story to start the year.
Hey, you guys were so good. We bought a few extra bonus seconds here. Jim, real quickly, big pitching matchup in the betting community, Rodon and Lugo here. I know for Seth, great start, but he did have a bit of a hiccup last time out.
Yeah, I love Carlos Rodon. He's locked in right now, and so are the Yankees. I know it was tough to lose 2 out of 3, but remember, they lost Friday night by 1 run without Juan Soto and with Cody Poteet pitching. I love Rodon in this matchup. That's where you want to put your money.
Matt, final word, quick.
Yeah, I like Rodon as well. I agree with Jim.
Okay, I love it. Short and sweet, guys. Great stuff as always. Remember, catch Matt Snyder's entire power rankings on CBSSports.com. Gentlemen, thank you again. Decent pitching lineup tonight across the board, highlighted by the Yankees and Royals with Rodon and Lugo, your probables. You see Burns also there on the board. Just to button up what we talked about at the beginning, the Dodgers continue to be the betting favorite at places like FanDuel, anywhere between plus 250 and 3-1.